his favorite pawn to d4, and Marc Andria comes back and plays pawn to d5. We have most likely Queen's Gambit with pawn to c4, and now Black goes Queen's Gambit declined with e6. Vidit brings his knight out to c3, and Marc-Andrea Maurizzi plays bishop to e7. Vidit takes the pawn, c takes d5, e takes d5, and bishop comes out to f4. It's now time for the knight to develop to f6. Once the bishop has been located on f4, the knight is more happy to come to f6 so that there is no bishop g5 business. Bishop comes to f5, and now Vidit plays his queen to b3, attacking the pawn on b7, and now knight to c6. It's very dangerous because queen b7, knight b4 comes in. So that's the reason why Vidit goes g4, trying to take the bishop away. If knight g4, there's queen d5. If bishop g4, you can now take on b7 as the bishop is not looking at c2. But he goes bd7, and Vidit calmly plays h3. Black castles here. And you can see that from the time usage, Vidit is down to 1 hour 3 minutes, while Marc Andria has 1 hour 39 minutes. He's playing quickly. Queen c2, first move where he thought a bit of was knight a5, and now pawn to c5. Maybe not the best way to play in this position, because Vidit can now take on c5, and this pawn on d5 is a bit weak. Bishop takes c5, and taking on d5 isn't the best because of rook c8. So that's the reason why Vidit simply goes bishop g2. Looking at the pawn here now, rook to c8, and he simply castles, and he says to his opponent that rook d1 and this pawn is really weak. So actually, and there you see rook d1, a calm, nice move. Queen goes to e8, and now Vidit brings his queen to b1. Now 3 attacks on the pawn. Knight jumps into c4, and Vidit kicks the knight away. White position is so beautifully placed. Now knight comes back to b6, defending the pawn on d5, and bishop to g5, attacking the knight here. He pushes d4, and essentially is giving up the pawn because he could no longer hold on to it. Now Vidit can take the knight on f6, but he goes pawn takes d4, attacking the bishop here. The bishop comes back to e7, and now bishop takes b7, attacking the rook on c8. You have rook to c7, attacking back the bishop on b7, and the bishop comes back to g2. Vidit brings his knight to d5, and bishop takes on e7. Sorry, Marc Andria brings his knight to d5, bishop e7 by Vidit, queen e7, and maybe just taking on d5 looks good. If you count the number of pawns, Vidit is 2 pawns up. That's a lot of material there. Rook comes to c8. Although black pieces are now flowing, 2 pawns is a lot of material to invest here. And Vidit goes rooks to c1, pawn comes up to g6. Knight takes knight, trading few more pieces. Bishop takes the rook, rook takes, and Vidit brings his knight to c3, attacking the bishop on d5. He takes, bishop takes g2, king takes g2, and h5. So Marc Andria is trying to get some play rolling. If g takes h5, a check and taking this pawn. But queen f3, calmly played here by Vidit. H takes g4. And now there's another facet in the position that has opened up. The h file is now open to attack here. So he goes queen to b4, attacking the knight on c3. And knight to e4. He comes knight d5. Danger on f6 square. Rook to d1, defending the d4 pawn. And now queen comes back to e7. You see that the f4 square is a bit weak. So he would love to go g5, knight f4 check, knight c5 played by Vidit. And the queen comes to g5. And you can see the time running low for Vidit. This is move 34. He has only 5 minutes left on the clock. Mistakes can happen in such moments. Knight f4 check. King comes back to f1. And now queen h6. Careful. If the queen moves away, this is a checkmate. But he goes pawn to b4. And now g5 played. Vidit moves in with a check. This is move 37. He has 3 minutes on the clock. King comes up to g7. And pawn to a3. Calmly playing his pawn up there. 38 moves. 2 more moves to make. With 2 minutes left on the clock. Queen h7. He comes rook e5. Is there a deadly check coming in on b1? Yes, he gives a check. Move number 39, and Vidit quickly gets his rook back. 40th move, and he comes back to h7. Maybe keeping the queen on a2 was also possible. Vidit gets up. You know, even if it's his move, he's like, okay, I need to take a break now. 50 minutes added on the clock. And Marc Andria somehow has managed to create some pressure on Vidit. The king is a bit weak. The pawns are not going anywhere. The knight on c5 is stopping the rook from entering. He goes pawn to d5. Vidit is like, the pawns are going. They are not going. d5, d6. Queen h6 played. Stopping pawn to d6. And now rook to e8 check. Not a check. Rook to e8 is a nice move. Because then maybe there's queen c3 business happening. And Vidit goes for it. Rook e8 found. The best move. And Vidit's time down to 26 minutes. Queen f6 once again, threatening a check here. And he goes queen e4. A nice move. But there could be a check and forcing the queen to come back. He goes knight g6. And queen to d3 played. A very interesting move. And I love this rook c8 move. What a beautiful move. If rook takes c8, queen e1 check, king goes anywhere, knight f4 is deadly. So Vidit finds the only move in this position, rook e4, which is insane. Knight jumps back to f4. But now the move that Vidit would love to make, queen d4, trading off the queens, and it is game over. Yes, queen d4 played. The queens are traded, and Marc Andria Maurizzi, before he could get his rook in and try to checkmate with it, it's done. King e1 is coming out. The king will be free. There are 2 extra pawns ready to roll. Rook check. King d2. And now knight takes d5 played. You can simply take queen takes d5. But there's also a very nice move that Vidit has here, which is rook to e5. Finds it, threatening rook g5, threatening the knight. Too many issues to solve. No more checks here. Everything's defended. Black is lost. And Vidit gets up. Marc Andria resigns. Vidit is... And Vidit says, instead of rook c8, you could have gone rook d8. and it was anyway winning for Vidit there. Well, the opening was not well played by Marc-Andrea Maurizzi, and when you don't do that against a player like Vidit, he doesn't give you too many opportunities, which is what happened here. The game lasted 49 moves, but from move number 10, it was White who was dominating the game and then went on to score a very, very important win. Kudos to Vidit for this win, and with this 2 wins in a row, he moves to 5 out of 7, a very good score. And